It's the Fairway Times podcast presented by Wild Goat. Somewhere around hole 12, golf turns into a different sport. The body's still there, but the brain is suddenly checking emails, replaying that trip on 7, and wondering what's for dinner. And that's the problem, because most golfers don't lose the round from a bad swing. They lose it when their attention wavers. Some people try and fix that with coffee or an energy drink, which is bold because nothing says commit to this delicate wedge shot like a racing heartbeat and trembling hands. That's where Wild Goat comes in. Their Focus Plus Hydration Gummy was built for golf, not for deadlifts, not for your wife's spin class, and not for people named Chad doing burpees in the parking lot, specifically for golf. It's got alpha GPC and cognizin to help keep your mind sharp, a dialed-in amount of caffeine plus L-theanine for smooth, steady energy, and electrolytes to help you stay hydrated and locked in through all 18 holes. So instead of feeling fried by the back nine, you actually feel present, calm, and clear, like a person who might finally make a good decision with a club in their hand. Go to getwildgoat.com and use code FairwayTimes10 for 10% off your entire order. That's getwildgoat.com. And now, before your focus drifts too, let's get into the show.
Waited for years. Many doubted we'd ever see it. But here it is. The return to glory.
This is the Fairway Times. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fairway Times podcast, and it is U.S. Open week. Shinnecock Hills, what we have all been waiting for, one of the hardest tests in all of golf. So I'd figured for this episode today, we would just start from the beginning. I want to talk about the history of this course. I want to talk about just the U.S. Open in general as a whole and kind of where we are headed the week. And then in the second half, we are going to talk about some interesting storylines as well as betting. So let's really start with the history of Shinnecock Hills. So, as a lot of you know, this is on the South Fork of the Hamptons, just outside of New York, and this is one of the 5 founding clubs of the U.S. Golf Association in the United States. It was founded in 1891, and it is the oldest incorporated country club in the United States. So, out of those 5, it is the oldest actual club. It hosted the second U.S. Open and second U.S. Amateur back in 1896. And this is the 6th time that the U.S. Open has come to Shinnecock, and the club will also be hosting once again in 2036. So this place is definitely not going anywhere. If you are an architectural nerd, this course was designed by Willie Davis with 12 holes back in the late 1890s. And 4 years later, Willie Dunn added 6 more to round it out to 18. In 1916, a gentleman named Charles Blair McDonald, the same guy who built the National Golf Links of America that we covered back, if you want to go read an interesting article, we did the 10 most exclusive golf courses in the country and why you and I will never play them. But National Golf Links was in there. And basically this group came in and they modernized a lot of them and created some signature holes. So there's been some tweaks since then, but mostly has remained the same. Some of the older trees that were used to like frame holes have been removed over the decade. And Ben Kernshaw, when he came in and got involved in the project, made some of the greens and fairways kind of expansion tweaks, I guess you will, back in 2012. But the bones of this golf course are nearly 100 years old, right? And they've aged very perfectly. This place is, when we talk about the essence of the game of golf, this is as close as you get. And really the other thing is I want to go back and read some of the champions. And if you're not a golf nerd, you may not know these names, but in terms of golf history, this is basically the people that have won this tournament. It's literally murderer's row. So James Fowlis in 1896, Raymond Floyd in 1986, Corey Pavin in 95, Retief Goosen in 04, and most recently Brooks Koepka in 2018, who beat Tommy Fleetwood by a single shot in one of the most brutal U.S. Open setups in recent memory. The 2018 championship is really the one that everyone remembers and references when they talk about Shinnecock, and that's for really good reason. The Greens actually got away from the USGA on Saturday, and conditions were so severe that that scoring averages ballooned, and players were visibly upset and frustrated walking off the course. This is that famous video of when Phil Mickelson hits his ball and it goes way by the hole, and before it even stops moving, he comes back and hits it again while it stops moving, because he knew that the penalty strokes he was going to take just didn't matter at that point, and he was so angry. And so the USGA really, really took a lot of heat for that for the next 2 years. And so ever since then, they are going to be very, very careful with the setup at Shinnecock. But I think that lesson is going to ring really true. And when the wind gets up and the greens get hard, Shinnecock can turn into one of the most unforgiving tests in major championship golf. I think this is a good time to announce that today they actually announced that the USGA announced that they will be syringing the greens at Shinnecock. And I think this is due to the fact that they are seeing a lot of wind in the forecast. So just for everybody to know, on the stint meter at Shinnecock, the greens usually roll between an 11.5 and 12. Now that is probably about, I don't want to use the word 2x, but for some of your local municipal golf courses that people that listen to this podcast are used to playing, about 2 times faster. If a muni is usually, let's just say, a 6 or a 7 on a great day. Okay. So Shinnecock normally is 2 times faster than that. Literally, when we're getting into the number 12 and 13, we're borderline like you're putting on glass or concrete. It is that fast. So I think what happened is the USGA saw that the wind is going to be intense and they did not want a repeat of 2018. So they announced that they would syringe the greens. So what this means is that they're going to put basically a light amount of hydrating water over the top of the greens, and this will keep them rolling. In theory, they think at around a 10 to a 10.5. Now, they're going to do this kind of between waves on Thursday and Friday is what they announced. And basically what it does is it hydrates the greens. And what they're saying is that it's to prevent wilt, preserve turf health, and reduce stress on the actual putting surface. Now, I think all of us can see directly through that bullshit. The USGA does not want this golf course to get away with them. And although the US Open is supposed to be as tough as possible, when, the top players in the world are criticizing one of the most historic clubs in the country, that is just not a good look at all. So basically, due to the forecasted winds, the USGA came out and said that they want them running in the mid 10s, maybe just touching an 11 at the fastest time. So they're going to allow basically for more time between the morning and afternoon waves of players for the crews to go to each green and syringe them with water. The gentleman at Shinnecock said it's not going to impact the playability of the greens compared to like the misters. And that's what he compared it to, is like the misters at the grocery store, spraying lettuce down. So, the USGA has come under fire in each of the past 2 US Opens for losing the golf course, or aka unfair conditions. So that's basically what we're trying to prevent here, just to kind of bring you up to speed. So let's talk a little bit about the course itself. So Shinnecock's going to play 7,434 yards, and it's a par 70 this week, though obviously the exact yardages shift day to day depending on how the USGA wants to set it up. The first hole really sets the tone immediately. From an elevated tee box, you're looking at a broad fairway that looks inviting, but narrows as the ball travels. Under 400 yards, and the temptation is really to be aggressive off the tee, especially with helping wind. The risk is that deep bunkers guard both sides of the green, and anything that runs through gets a severe fall off that leaves horrid recovery, really. So a birdie is absolutely out there on this hole, but also so is double or triple bogey. And that really tension and decision making, I feel like, is really what makes this golf course so special. Really, the defining characteristic of Shinnecock is the way it uses the wind and firm turf rather than pure length to create difficulty. This is not a normal PGA Tour golf course that we are used to that may be almost playing 8,000 yards, right? This is generally considered one of the earliest pieces of link style golf in America, right? We don't call it traditional link style golf. Some do, but we don't really think of it that way. But that is truly what it is, because back when this golf course was built, a lot of what we were modeling out of was the first golf courses over in Ireland. So very, very interesting there, kind of to note that this is not going to be a Bryson DeChambeau playground. Now, Bryson has proved he can win at other golf courses, but what I mean by that is this is not like Wingfoot, where bombers just keep getting rewarded over and over again. Um, so what another piece of links golf is really the way that greens are angled and use slope. So if you choose the wrong line, the angle of your approach shot could really put you in a bad place. And I know we don't normally talk about like angles in that regard, but at a place like Shinnecock where, you know, because the greens are going to be firm, right? A 10.5 at Shinnecock with wind is still very, very fast. Short game and creativity around the greens become massively important because it's almost like soft style target golf. And if your approach shot is from a bad angle, you just may not be able to hit that target. So let's just talk about a little bit, like defending champ JJ Spawn last year, Oakmont, who beat Bobby McIntyre. He comes back at plus 4,000. Now, once again, when I'm reading this to you, the odds could completely change by the time you're reading that for some weird reason. But obviously he's looking to become the first player to win back-to-back US Opens in a long time. And that is a tough task anywhere. But if he wins back-to-back at Oakmont and then at Shinnecock, that would be one of the most crazy feats in golf ever. Let's go into really what type of player and archetypes succeed at Shinnecock, because this is a really an interesting part that matters when we're trying to figure out who could win this thing. Shinnecock really rewards players who can control their ball in the wind, who can hit flighted shots, who can flight their wedges, and who can putt well, who have, we just said the word short game creativity, but I'm going to bring that up again because they are going to be scrambling from very tight exposed lies, right? And there's no way to overpower this golf course. Now, I do want to say the fairways are wide enough that driving distance, it just matters. It still matters a little bit, but it matters so much less than like what we saw at Wingfoot a couple years ago. So let's just talk about the 2018 result, because it really tells a good story, I think. So Brooks Koepka won the championship, and at that time, his whole game really revolved around ball striking, along with the ability to stay locked in through brutal conditions. Now, Brooks Koepka just came out and said something very interesting today in a press conference, which is like, a reporter asked him, like, how do you prepare for this? And Brooks literally, in of course the most Brooks-like fashion, said, I don't look at pin sheets. I don't look at weather. I don't care. I go out on the first tee and I play golf. And I think that could actually really, really benefit Brooks here again today, because there's going to be a lot of players that are over analyzing everything and in theory just cognitively unlocking themselves because they're almost giving themselves a reason to not play well. Oh, the wind's blowing 30 today. It's cold, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Brooks Koepka is just going to go out there and play golf, right? Tommy Fleetwood, for most people that watch that, was actually the most impressive player on the weekend because he ended up only one shot back, but he shot 63 that day, which, if we look back at all US Open history, is one of the greatest closing rounds in the history of the major. Fleetwood, obviously an elite iron player with a very underrated short game. Those are exactly the tools that are going to travel here. The kind of the betting analysis we are leading hard into is one specific point, which is short game is the most single important skill at Shinnecock. The greens are going to still be incredibly fast, and maintaining position that you're putting from is going to be genuinely difficult, even for the most elite players. So that means that strokes gained around the green and also strokes gained putting are kind of stats we can look at above anything else. When I wrote this article that I'm sure some of you read, the other thing I really want to talk about is this term called wind management, right? Shinnecock sits on almost the most southern point of Long Island, and the wind coming off the water is just real year round. And a lot of PGA Tour players, yes, are they the best ball strikers in the world? Of course, but they don't play like with this amount of wind year round. So once again, players that can really control trajectory. So right off the top of my head, we just said Tommy Fleetwood. Also, just the Justin Roses of the world. This could kind of line up really, really well for them. So before we get into betting, there is another factor that we need to talk about, and that is the Scottie Scheffler storyline. Scottie Scheffler has a chance to complete the career Grand Slam at Shinnecock, right? He won the PGA Championship and the Open last year. He has 2 green jackets, and a win this week would make him just the 7th player in the modern era to complete the Grand Slam. Sunday's final round also happens to fall on Scheffler's 30th birthday, which is the kind of details that all of us golf writers and reporters just dream about. Really, the case for Scheffler here seems very obvious. He has finished in the top 7 in 4 of his last 5 U.S. Opens. His best finish at this major was runner-up in 2022. He's been in the mix at 6 of his last 7 majors. He is the betting favorite at plus 450 to plus 567, depending on the book. We will pull up the DraftKings Sportsbook right now and see what he is. As of right now, Scottie Scheffler outright winner is plus 450. The case against him right now is more nuanced than I think a lot of people want to admit, though. He has just 1 win in 2026 after having at least 6 wins in 2024 and 25. His approach play and putting at the Memorial, his final tune-up before this week, were described as pedestrian, with strokes gained numbers well below what he needed to win at a venue like Shinnecock. The talent has clearly not gone anywhere, but the sharpness that made him nearly unbeatable for 2 years has not quite been there in 26. We say all that. We see the potential small argument that broke out between him and Ted Scott. Am I betting Scottie Scheffler as the outright winner? I'm not. But if you do, I do not blame you at all. And I see why you do it, because he's kind of turning into this person that just is going to show up at majors, right? Rory McIlroy, second in odds right now, currently plus 900. He won the 2011 U.S. Open and is chasing his 7th major title, which would put him in some of the most exclusive company in the history of the game. He missed the cut in his only previous Shinnecock appearance back in 2018, but he has posted 5 top 7 finishes in the last 8 majors, and the consistency at this point in his career is truly undeniable. As much as I don't like Rory McIlroy, Rory to make the cut could be one of the safest bets. At plus 1,000 or plus 900 compared to Scheffler's chalk price, McIlroy represents real value for anyone who believes in his major winning moment after the year he has had. So what are my picks and bets? Okay. So as I'm looking down this leaderboard, right now I'm on the DraftKings Sportsbook. If they want to sponsor us, feel free. My email and DMs are open. John Rahm right now is plus 1175 and Cameron Young is plus 1900. And I think those are 2 dudes who are playing some of the best golf right now. Okay. Now, something I really, really like is when you scroll around the DraftKings Sportsbook, yes, you can organize by winner as always, but golf is really about trying to stack odds in your favor, okay? So when we talk about top 10s, what's up? I think Tommy Fleetwood could be the safest top 10 that you may be able to bet. And why? Because he's just going to be the guy that's going to be an elite ball striker, and you're not really betting on him to win, which is scary at Shinnecock because I truly think that anything, and I mean anything, could happen this week. Okay, so it's pretty hard to deny that Matt Fitzpatrick right now could be having the season of anybody on the entire PGA Tour. And the other guy that, if you want a little sleeper, he's just coming off a PGA Championship, Aaron Rai, which the last time I checked, I'm not going to scroll all the way down to that area right now live. He was plus 6,000 the last time I looked. And I don't think there's any reason why he can't go out and win this golf tournament the way we saw his short game and putting. And if you remember, Aaron Rai hits a very, very low tee ball. So that is going to help him, right? Whatever way you choose, I think this is truly going to be a golf purist, just extremely special week of golf. We don't, we get this treat maybe once every 8 years to see Shinnecock at the highest level. Something I will say is that if you want a very, very good view of Shinnecock as you are listening to this tonight, or even tomorrow as you're at work and kind of tracking the scores, throw on YouTube Golf. All the creators got to go out and play Shinnecock, and it was nowhere near tournament condition, but you really get to see the difficulty and some special shots of the golf course that make you appreciate it, even more. Some really, really just, popular bets that I've heard around the golf community. Right now, just to let everybody know, plus 6,000. Aaron Rai has dropped down to plus 10,500, and Bud Colley, coming off of a win last week at RBC, plus 10,000, guys. So there is a ton of value to be had on this board, and I really, really don't think you can go wrong because nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows how hard the golf course is going to play, and I think this is just truly going to be a very, very special test and week of golf. Okay, so last thing I want to do is I have, talked about my own game on a lot of different podcasts, on articles written about my progress. So, and I kind of wanted to update you guys on where that is. So, I just want to start and be very, very honest. My game personally is in a very, very dark space right now. I went through a period over the last 2.5 months where I was playing the best golf of my life. I went out and shot 80 on an extremely difficult golf course from the back tips, and I thought I was treading in the direction. A lot of you know my goal was to get down to between a 4 and a 6 by the end of 2026. And although I'm still going to keep striving for that, I think we have kind of ran into a bit of a road bump. And let me talk to you about why. So I was shooting consistently low 80s, almost dabbling. We're talking about lip out putts or stupid blow up holes away from shooting consistently in the 70s for 2 straight months. I was putting together extremely good rounds. I was really, really confident in everything I had going on, and I was very, very mentally locked in on my process and routine. But I got to this place where, and this could, of course, be 100% my fault, but my swing on video, I just have never thought is good enough to get to low single digits. And that is because I really, really have some issues where right before, contact is made with the ball, right before impact, my hands extend out. And I have a ton of issues where I cannot keep my back elbow in that bent position. And then I can just rotate through the ball with forward shaft lean at impact. And so that very, very much started kind of overtaking my brain a little bit. And naturally, I wanted to fix that because I was like, okay, I'm in a place where my game's the best it's ever been. I made a putting switch um, back into the lap DF3, so the Scotty Cameron is now sitting in the garage. And I changed grips from claw grip back to a more traditional grip, and my putting had never been better. My chipping was in a great place. I basically taught myself just a pitching wedge low runner versus using a 54, and it changed a lot of things. It allowed me to give myself a chance to get up and down a lot more. And once again, I was really, really confident in my game, but the ball striking just was occasionally erratic. And there would be a random 8 on the scorecard because I just couldn't, keep it in play off the tee, which has always been my struggle since I started playing golf 3.5 years ago. So started tinkering with my swing and slowly have just gone down a very, very bad path. And I've told you guys that I want to be as open and honest in my process as possible. And I played my last round was at one of the most beautiful golf courses I've ever played called Oak Quarry, way out in the Inland Empire. And I shot triple digits, guys. Yes, I have not shot triple digits. I shot 101, and I have not shot that bad since probably the first 6 months of me playing golf. And it was a very, very frustrating day. The ball was moving both ways on me. The misses were happening both ways. And if any of you guys know what Oak Quarry is like, it is a very mountainous, almost style golf course that if you are not hitting it halfway well, all you're going to do is take penalty strokes all day. And balls will literally roll off the side of cliffs. And that is just what happened to me yesterday. So that was a real wake up call to say, okay, it is kind of time for a change. I have to do something different, whether I have to fully commit to and finding a coach that I can work with consistently on my swing. Is it just that I need to work on some things that I know deep down need to get fixed in my swing? I think it's all the above. Um, I really have been enjoying this concept. I don't know if a lot of you have ever listened to this audiobook, and if you ever had, please comment below what your thoughts were. But there's a great book called Unf Your Golf Swing. And I was so discouraged after that round. I immediately got in the car. I remembered it just came to me out of the abyss of like, maybe now's a good time to listen to this because I don't know which way is up. Um, and I've been listening to it, and I think it has the opportunity to really, really help me. In this book, they really go over a lot the concept that the golf swing is just a throwing motion. And coming from being a baseball player, this makes a lot of sense to me. It's just always been all about, can I get into that more side bent position at impact? And can I get my weight forward enough to create the right positions to create consistent ball striking? Something I will say that has really, really helped me, and when I was playing the best golf, is I shortened my driver by almost 2 inches. So now it is borderline mini driver length. I did not give up any length. I threw some lead tape on there for weighting purposes, and I was hitting it as far as I ever did. Um, the other thing that's happened recently is my beautiful fiance back in May got me the new ShotScope LM1 launch monitor, which for those of you that don't know is a budget launch monitor. It was around the $200 mark, and it shows smash factor, carry, total, and club head speed. That's it. It's very, very simple. And I've been using that, and it's been a ton of fun to see my numbers. So that's, I think, something that I can continue to use to keep in my back pocket. And it's something that I want to continue to refine, which is just knowing my numbers even at a higher level. So as of right now, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be traveling for a while. And I am just gonna kind of take a little break from playing and going to the range. Because I think I just kind of need a mental reset to not think about my swing at all. And I kind of need to some time to come up with a different plan because I've had this cycle a couple times where I get very, very close to that 6, 7, 8-digit handicap mark. And I truly think in my heart of hearts that my swing, and I know everybody's going to be like, oh, the cognitive performance guy is saying his swing is not good enough. Guys, I've had 2 swing lessons my entire life, and they were just one off random swing lessons that I got the opportunity to do. So I truly think that I need to go back to the drawing board, and I may need to go see a coach to understand my own golf swing at a high level. So then when things do start going a little bit astray, I have some North Star topics that I can go back to in times of need. Because otherwise, at this point, with my knowledge of the golf swing, I'm just guessing. And that is a very, very bad feeling. So that is kind of, my plan moving forward is just to kind of take a little break, reassess, and figure out really what's going to make me successful and figure out again what is going to bring the love of the game back for me a little bit playing. When I went out and played at Oak Quarry, it was an absolutely unbelievable golf course. For those of you that don't know, it is one of the top ranked par threes, number 16 in the United States. It was just an overall beautiful experience, but it is very hard to play golf when you are struggling that bad. The other thing is that I have a higher swing speed. Ball speed is usually a little bit higher than the average player. And that means that when I'm swinging it bad, it is really bad. And extremely, dispersion is extremely far and bad, right? I can't even keep it in play. So that is kind of what's going on in my own golf game. I will probably continue to build off of my putting and short game momentum because that is something I'm always going to pride myself in, is having a good short game, because that is something I can control. And that is something that I've almost self-taught myself. Shout out Dan Grieve on YouTube for the 3 release systems that completely changed my life. I talk about the 3 release cognitive system with my students now. I don't teach the technique because I don't know anything about it besides me teaching myself the last 3 years of what Dan Grieve teaches. But I think it's so important to have a cognitive framework for your short game. So if you ever want to check out the 3 release system, go watch Dan on YouTube. His videos are truly excellent. And we've emailed back and forth a couple times, just me asking him questions. And he's such a nice guy. Also, a lot of your favorite tour players, he is their short game coach. So he really, really knows what he's talking about. So next week, guys, next week, we will be back with a U.S. Open recap, as well as maybe, by that time, maybe I've got out and swing the clubs again. Maybe I'm still on break. I'm not sure. But we're going to cover a range of different topics. And maybe next week, we're going to dabble a little bit back into baseball, since we are almost midway through the summer. And that means the All-Star game is approaching, and All-Star game voting is in full swing. So we can talk about all that. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week, everybody.
Like to hit bombs.
I do. There's a lot more to winning than just, hitting bombs.
You saw him dropping all kinds of bombs off the tee. I mean, just hellacious bombs.
I have to have the ability to hit bombs. We talk about it. You got to hit long out here. Hit bombs. Todd, when I stop hitting bombs, I'll play the Champions Tour, but I'm hitting some crazy bombs.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Remember to hit bombs, and I will see you next time.